Everyone, it's Sarah. I just thought with the content this week with regards to the whole notion about constructs and concepts and theories and models, that I'd kind of share with you the process that I walked through when I did my dissertation study for my PhD, how I kind of went from a noodling over, I wonder why, to actually going full force in terms of developing the research study, which is exactly kind of the path that you're on as part of this course in a bit of a way. So I just thought I'd walk you through this just as a kind of a way to look at the content. So I was very interested in the professional practice leader roles that are quite common in a lot of organizations, primarily in acute care, I'll say, right across the country. Lots in Ontario, some in other countries as well. And I firmly believe that these roles that are really there to look at, professional practice issues, and other areas to support the organization, I firmly believed that they made a difference in the practice environment. By having those roles in place, the professional practice environment was enhanced. Back in the day, there was absolutely no literature to support this whatsoever. So that's actually why I went off and got my PhD, because I firmly believe they made a difference. So here are the various concepts that I was intrigued in that I started to knit together in order to pull the study together and develop then this model. So first and foremost, I was firmly convinced that these roles, when done well, made a difference to the professional practice environment. My focus was on nursing, but right now I think I would say they make a difference to the practice environment for all professions. So then the conversation was, I was like, okay, this makes a difference on that. Period. Now I was like, okay, so then what makes this effective? So knowing from experience and from colleagues, we kind of felt that there were a couple of key things that really impacted this. Number one was what we referred to as the organizational power. So how the roles were actually structured in the organizations. We saw great variability right across the province. Some were full-time, some were part-time, some reported to VPs, some individuals only reported to managers. So even just how the role was structured in the organization, then we felt made a difference on how effective they would be. The other thing I knew from experience is that because these roles typically had absolutely no formal power, no budget, no line authority, really can't make anybody do anything, that their ability then to influence others, people that did have that positional power, budget and line authority, was huge to them being effective here. We also knew from experience outside of the role itself that the support of managers, so those that did have formal budget and line authority, was also important. So these are the various concepts. And then we'll talk about how we kind of knitted them all together in a second. So these are the concepts in terms of, and started to look at their relationships. This makes a difference to this, which makes a difference to this, et cetera, et cetera. So that was that. Then I came up with my I'll say the purpose statement. I wanted to see what was the effect of organizational power and influence on enabling professional practice leaders to fulfill their role functions, thus resulting in an enhanced practice environment for nurses. So now that I had my concept, I needed to go to see, well, are there any theoretical frameworks that can actually make those concepts more like constructs, clearly defined, measurable, something that everybody agrees upon to a certain degree. So for organizational power, I looked to Cantor's theory of organizational power or structural empowerment, and Cantor has very clear associations that if people have access to formal and informal power, information, resources, and support, if they have those things, they're more likely to achieve their role functions. In terms of the influence tactics, I happened to trip across the work of Gary Uckel, who looks at the whole notion of personal influence tactics. So he's identified what are 11 different influence tactics, and depending on who you try to influence, these certain tactics will enable you to kind of achieve your own desired outcomes. There was no theoretical framework for the professional practice leader role. The perceptions of manager support was just, we wanted to stuff it in because we thought it was important. And then we drew on the work of, Magnet Hospital work and the work of Eileen Lake in terms of the professional practice environment, where she's developed a tool that really kind of looks at what are the key indicators of what constitutes an optimal professional practice environment for nurses. So there's the framework, the theoretical framework. So that then gives me some um, evidence-based paths to take to kind of to start to look at the different relationships. So again, so here's the model back again. So these are then that helps to develop then the hypotheses. So where you put the circles and the arrows that go with them. So then my hypotheses were organizational power had a direct impact on PPL role functions. Organizational power also had an indirect effect on role functions because it was mediated, if you will, influence tactics. Felt that there was some degree of impact of manager support on the ability to achieve role functions was moderated to some degree, but ultimately the big hypothesis was that there was a direct and positive relationship between this and that. So that comes to then the hypothesis statements that there was as I just said, there's a direct relationship between organizational power and role function, as well as an indirect effect through influence tactics. The relationship between the influence tactics and role function was also moderated or impacted by manager support. And again, the last one that I just mentioned, the ultimate hypothesis was that there is a direct and positive relationship between role functions and nurses' perceptions of their practice environment. So that just gives you a quick overview of how you go from a, I wonder, or why is this not working, or why does it work here and not work there, to looking at, so what are the various concepts that are really important to kind of take into consideration? What are the theoretical frameworks that will help us to guide us, basing on the work of others, to keep us on the path? And then how do you actually take all of this and actually start to make some statements about the relationships between the two? So I hope you found this helpful, and I look forward to your chats this week. Thanks. Bye.